on the dot. The stream is live. Dismount. What are you talking about? I just hit the start button. Believe me. Bull honky, man. Bull honky. Now, I got it up too. It says I'm live. Yeah, you know that them YouTube servers are slow. 30 seconds after 8. I'm sorry I did not meet your standards, Dismount. I'll try to improve. If I get bigger, I would actually start that. All right, but anyway, so welcome to Beyond the Podcast. We're starting right now. Code Vein Vampire Anime Dark Souls. That's essentially what it is, and it looks freaking awesome. I will say, out of all the Dark Soul-esque games, it is one that actually piques my interest the most. So the first thing that I really wanted to discuss was the initial trailer. So when I saw the trailer, pretty much we know the entire story. Like with every Dark Souls game, the story is relatively simple, and it tells you the entire story up front. Like Dark Souls 1, the light is fading, go rekindle the light. Dark Souls 2, the light is fading, go rekindle the light. Dark Souls 3, the light is fading, go rekindle the light. So that was pretty much what you were doing the entire time in the Dark Souls series. In this game, however, everyone seems to be a freaking vampire, and there seems to be a blood shortage, and that's the extent that we know. We don't pretty much know anything else besides that. Did you have a chance to catch the trailer, Dismount? Damn it, Dismount. How are we going to talk about it? Dark Souls 3. I mean, that's pretty much all you needed to know.
Narrative of the games. I think it'll bring something fresh and new to the series, to the franchise. So, I mean, honestly, I'm kind of looking forward to it. From what I saw of it, I feel like it would be a game that would probably pique my interest. I'm always into like the kind of occult stuff, the vampires, zombies, that kind of stuff. So I feel like it would be a game that I'd be interested in playing.
Well, with every Dark Souls esque game, I mean, there's Dark Souls that is Dark Souls, and then there's the copies. I mean, we have this with every type of game. There is the main game that started the revolution, and then there's the copies that are well less known and kind of aim towards a very small niche. And I feel like that's what Code Vein is doing, because it's very anime. I could literally just take this, make it an anime, and call it Code Vein, and it will flip and blow people's minds in the anime world. And it's essentially making a JRPG, but a J Dark Souls game, because I didn't even know about Tales of Symphonia and that whole thing until I saw a video, and essentially it's its own genre of JRPGs. I mean, when we think of RPGs, we don't think of Tales of Symphonia. We think of Final Fantasy and the Elder Scrolls series.
Mm-hmm.
So with this, I'm actually very interested to see if it's going to spark a new genre that aims towards the anime people. With the JRPGs, now we have J Dark Souls. Japanese Dark Souls, which is essentially what this is with vampires. I mean, they get really hard with you hear anime and vampires. So
I mean, if you think about it, I mean, like I said, like with Dark Souls, it's kind of directed like a specific audience. You know, JRPGs are kind of directed at a specific audience. When you take like a hybrid like that, though, then you pull people in from two different genres that might pique both their interests. Yeah, you're gonna have those like hardcore fans of each one that be like, no, this game's trash. But
right.
when you have those people that are just like kind of, I don't really want to say casual fans, but they're maybe not as hardcore. Like, oh, this is the only type of game I play. You know, you'll get people from both sides and maybe get a bigger, uh, a whole new following, like a cult following, where they're like, oh, this is the only kind of game that I want to play. I think it's smart.
Yeah, it's definitely smart by Bandai because because just to go back to list all games that are not Dark Souls but are Dark Soul esque. I mean, we have like Lords of a Fallen that I never will play. We have Nioh that I never will play. We have The Surge that I never will play because those games they tried to mimic Dark Souls, but they're not Dark Souls. So they tried to,
Isn't
I would say, copy the identity, but go ahead.
isn't Bloodborne kind of like along those lines too?
Well, see, Bloodborne was actually created by From Software, though.
Oh,
So,
okay.
so it has the same feeling that Dark Souls has, and but these games, they can't blatantly copy Dark Souls, so they try to change things. That if you go from Dark Souls to that game, there's a learning curve that can, to me, make or break you wanting to play a game. So, for example, when I played the Neo beta, I gave it a shot. I came in with an open mind, knowing that it's not Dark Souls. It's trying to be its own identity. However, I just could not get into the game mechanics of that game. Now, there's going to be a bunch of people that may disagree with me. However, I don't feel like it really captured my feeling. There was multiple reasons why it didn't. First off, being in a very Japanese setting, and that was awesome because it was a lot of Japanese mythology and all this stuff. And then you play this guy whose name is William. Everyone has like this most Japanese name ever, and your guy is William. And I feel like they just missed the mark with that. So that was like the first bad impression I got because they really missed the mark there of creating your own like Japanese character, which I feel like every Dark Soul-esque game should have, because that would make Dark Souls so great is you can create your own character. So your character had its own identity, and you kind of lost that with Neo. And Dark Souls proven that you can have a main character. They don't have to be like a named character like in the Final Fantasy series. Each different series or game title had its identified character, such as Cloud, Squall, Titus. All those characters are defined and are put in within their own universe, where if you're creating a brand new game that is supposed to be Dark Soul-esque, you should be able to create a character that is a main character, but is also very different each game. It doesn't feel like you're playing the same character, same style. And I feel
Right.
like Neo kind of missed the ball on that and what they were trying to achieve. At least with me, someone could obviously say something completely different and call me wrong, but that's their personal opinion that I don't care about. So,
Damn, just throw it out there like that.
just throwing out there, I do not care
Like,
about your
you
opinion.
may
It's
have
your
an opinion,
First Amendment
but
right,
I
but I don't care. So, and then with the Surge, I just didn't. I that was a game. I've been very picky with my games in 2017 because I feel like 2016 we had so many games we couldn't digest it all. You pick up one game, then there's another game released the next day. Like I needed time to digest, play the game, know how bad or good it is, and enjoy it. And I didn't feel like I had that in 2016. So in 2017, it's been compared to 2016, it's been a lot more scarce with game releases, and we actually,
especially new IPs.
yes, especially with new IPs. I feel like the way the gaming industry is going, it's going to cause a lot of to me, it's causing a lot of concern because of the way games are being released. We have really great games that get released, and then we have a lot of mediocre to bad games that are filling up stores. And it's making it very difficult to really try to enjoy playing games. But I mean, that's going off topic. We're talking about the Souls genre here. And overall, the Souls genre to me is relatively one of the newest genres we have. With the advancement of each console, I would say, in the PS2 era, we had the hack and slash genres appear. You had your God of Wars, you had your Devil May Cry's, you had your Castlevania.
Oh, the big one. Well, the big one was what was the one that came out? It was at launch with that came a huge series, Dynasty Warriors.
Dynasty Warriors, yes, that's
like that originally came out on that came out on PS2, and that was all it was just horde hack and slash. And then they made I think the last one I saw was 8 on the PS4, maybe something like that.
And then Nintendo
I played the demo for the first one, and that was
Hyrule Warriors.
Yep.
So we have a new genre here, but how is it that it's really hard not to copy Dark Souls, I would say, on a fundamental level. Talking about just gameplay wise, it's very hard not to copy. I mean, their dodge roll was it's so fluent. It's really hard not to want to copy that. And I mean, there's a lot to be desired to me with the combat system itself. I feel like I wouldn't say it really improved, but I would say hitboxes and stuff like that. But the combat, each game doesn't really have different combat except for the style of combat you pick. If you're going a tank or an assassin or a mage, other than that, the combat's relatively the same. You beat bosses and do things. So to me, it's how is Code Vein? Wait, go ahead. This one.
I said that's what I do. I beat bosses and do things.
That's pretty much the basis of Dark Souls, is you just beat bosses and do things. But with Code Vein now being added into the mix, being very Japanese, pretty much 100% anime, I feel like there's a lot more opportunity. When you go anime, to me, there is a bigger, endless possibility. You can do the most outrageous power-ups, morphs, changes, and it would be okay because it's an anime RPG essentially.
I feel like
go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. No, I feel like a lot more games are kind of going to that anime art / gameplay style. I mean, you look at you look at games even Overwatch, a popular game like Overwatch. I feel like the art style in that game, as far as the effects and whatnot, are anime style. You look at a new one that just came out in early access on PS4 that's kind of like PUBG. Fortnite. Yep. Even the whole thing is just kind of anime-esque animation and drawing. I feel like a lot more games are going to that just because there is that. I mean, just like the Call of Duty series, when they started going to the jump packs and stuff, there was just so much more possibilities with it. When you start going into the future and you start going into anime, you can do more crazy stuff with them. People don't question it, that's probably not how it really happened. But if it's anime or futuristic, then you have this endless possibility of possibilities.
Right. So I think Joe says he's on his way. But I think you do have a point there. Anime is becoming a lot more mainstream. I think I could definitely see, in America at least, an actual anime channel. Right now it's just a streaming service such as Crunchyroll. You have anime on Hulu. You even have anime on Netflix. So there's definitely an audience.
Microphone check.
Joe, you just interrupting in here. You don't even say what up. You don't bring donuts. You don't knock or nothing. You just say
there's not the coffee at the AA meeting. There's nothing. It's just busting
just
in.
Nothing. I could tell my life story. Joe just enters in.
Shaka's up here like, my name is, Jozu Shaka, and he's trying to like give his story, and Joe just busted in. He's like, "Hey, what's up? I'm here. I'm here to mess stuff up."
Pretty much. So I'm gonna finish this point, and then I'm gonna let Joe speak for a little bit. I'm gonna present Joe with a question. So anime becoming very more westernized and mainstream. So I feel like in a lot of the PS4, Xbox One era in particular, we've gone to, we went from, I would say, we went from 2D to 16-bit to polygons to better looking polygons to really good polygons to now excellent polygons. So we've gone from
And VR.
very, and now we're going to anime. I think that's the next evolution, because we've gone to like very real. The games are becoming very realistic in a sense. They're trying to make it look as real as possible, and I feel like as you do that, now you can create a kind of an anime or cartoony style of game that's very colorful. That's a big contrast to the more realistic. Because the more realistic games, they look beautiful in a different way. They don't look, I would say, as color popping, but more easy on the eyes. Like, wow, this is, when you like in The Last Guardian, when you're staying on a cliff, or when you just go outside, you're just not popping in like very vibrant colors, but a very mellow.
Yeah, even
like,
with
go ahead.
even with a game like Horizon Zero Dawn, which is a huge game, like that game's like set, in the future past,
Right.
and but still like just standing on a cliff and looking out over it and seeing all this stuff, like it looks like it could actually be something you could go look out your window and be like, oh shit, it's the same world that I'm living in right now. But yeah,
Right.
I agree with you. Like with the anime, like it kind of gives you that whole new. They didn't have the realistic stuff before, so now you have that contrast, like you said, with the color popping and you can just do so much more with it, especially with the high res stuff that they have now that you can do. I mean,
Right.
gaming PCs and the even the console hardware now can just run incredible graphics at 60 frames per second, and you feel like, oh my gosh, like this could actually be a real thing right now. Like you're looking through a window.
All right, Joe. Now that you finally decided to join us, Code Vein, anime Dark Souls, what do you want to see out of this that separates it from the other Soul-esque games such as Nioh, The Surge, Lords of the Fallen, all that good stuff?
Well, what I want to see, like the Surge or Neo, and it just should stay in the same Souls formula because that's what From Software is good at. They can create good environments, good gameplay. They just need to stick to what they know. Crazy, like Bloodbourne. Yeah, it's a stretch from Dark Souls, but it is different in its own right. But it still basically is Dark Souls, just with different parries and different moves, different bosses, different environments, things like that. So I would like to see it just a different setting because Dark Souls is amazing, whether it's a knockoff or a sequel.
All right, so, but Joe, this is from completely. These are new contenders, I would say, in the Soul genre with Bandai Namco. From Software not even touching this, and it's a lot more, and it's pretty much an anime. I know you don't
It's not
watch
From
anime
Software
because
developing it. Oh, that's right. They're doing something different.
yeah, they're doing it completely different. But this is 100% anime. Like I could take this, make it an anime itself, and it would sell hundreds of thousands, and everyone in Japan would flip and love it. But you know, being an anime is a lot more extravagant. It's about power ups and flashy, flashy crap that comes out of nowhere. And one thing, I would say if I was to put this in a genre, I would put it in maybe the
Oh.
shonen horror genre. Um,
Well, I'm looking up the company that's been developing this right now, and the same people who did God Eaters. So I don't think this is going to be aligned with the Souls genre at all, like play style.
Now I watched some gameplay and it looked very Souls
Slow
esque.
pace,
Yeah, it
yeah,
was slow
but I think
paced,
they'll
but
get away from that and make it a bit quicker and put their own spin on it. I played any of the God Eaters, but they're already like they're faster paced, but they're still in the same Souls area with difficult bosses and difficult enemies.
and I
Gonna
think
align
that's
less with
fine
that.
because Dark Souls does feel a little slow if you're first starting out because the game doesn't tell you what to do at all. So I feel like if you're going to make the game fast paced, you're going to have to include a little bit of, I would say, a guiding hand, maybe a little bit of linearization, because Dark Souls wasn't. It was only linear to an extent. Like you obviously could not reach certain areas if you did not have certain items or unlocked certain things. Like you couldn't get to Honor Orlando if you didn't clear what that one castle, and you couldn't clear the castle unless you did this one thing. So there was a level of linearization, but with this being supposed to be more fast paced, I feel like we're going to see a little bit more linearization than we would normally see, and it might fall, based on what you said, it might fall a little bit more on the JRPG side, where it's more of an action JRPG than a soul-esque RPG. Because to me, there's three classifications of RPG with the introduction of the Soul series. Is that you have your RPG, your classic command style RPG. Then you have your action RPG, which is kind of command style, but is still very linear. And then you have your soul-esque RPG, which is hard because the game doesn't tell you that there's no levels except for yours. You don't know what the boss level is or whatever. You don't know. Oh, I need to get to level so and so to beat this boss. It's more of here, go do this. You kind of need to do this one thing to get to this place, but I'm not going to tell you how to do that thing or get to that one place. Except I'll tell you have to ring 2 bells, but that's all I'm going to tell you. So
This sounds like
Yeah, I
Resident
think
Evil.
Bandai
yeah,
marketed it more like a Souls genre with the prepare to dying thing. But from looking at the developer, I think it's going to go. I think it's going to stray pretty far from the Souls genre and be its own title. And I think it will just mainly be a JRPG, like an action JRPG, hack and slash. Some footage of it, so I'm not 100% on board with this one after doing some research.
I mean, I feel like it's going to be a more action related than an actual RPG. I mean, we still have to see like more gameplay. Obviously, I mean, we just had the release trailer, and then we only have like 17 minutes from IGN's video,
Of
which we
them
don't.
playing it super badly.
Yeah, them going super slow and non-realistic.
Yeah.
But I mean, that is what we have to base the game off of. So I wouldn't mind I don't mind it being its own identity. It should be its own identity. Otherwise, it's going to feel like more of the same. However, you know, who is the audience that you're trying to tackle? Are they trying to get people who've played Dark Souls and it's like, hey, do you like anime and Dark Souls? Well, play Code Vein. Or are they trying to get people who play JRPGs? Like, hey, you like JRPGs but want something a little bit more action? Then play Code Vein. You know, it's kind of who are trying to target. It's a little bit up in the air. I feel like, you know, they're trying to make it more Dark Souls esque, which Dark Souls apparently now is, I guess, is just going to be its own really genre in terms of style. But in comparison, you know, with Dark Souls 3 ending, you know, being, you know, that series in itself done, outside of that, do you think that the, I would say, spiritual successors have done a good job of being their own identity but following a Dark Souls formula, such as Nioh, the Surge, and do you think Code Vein will, if the previous two have not, do you think Code Vein will succeed where those two have failed? Sorry with you, Joe.
I think Nioh was a really good, not knockoff, because it does have its own identity and it does bring enough. The only similarity it has is the bonfire system, the difficult boss fights, and that's pretty much it. Beyond that, it's its own like different stances, different ninjas, different story. Difficulties scaled a bit differently than Dark Souls. It's not as cheap, but the bosses are a bit more difficult, and there's more random mid-tier bosses that you have to fight along the way, plus a ton of enemies and challenges, and it's more of a level base. The Surge added an easy mode after people were complaining, and the Surge is probably the closer thing that relates pretty much almost a direct knockoff of Dark Souls or the Dark Souls genre action RPG, because it's just 5 difficult bosses. The only thing it does differently is armor pieces, and that's by dismembering enemies, their weak or their strong points. But beyond that, it has a good dodge system. I think they all do well. Lords of the Fallen is the only one I haven't played too much, and there's plenty of 2D. There's like Salt and Sanctuary, Dead Cell, which are pretty much just they want to capture Dark Souls essence, which is difficulty but fun. A lot of them, they end up just being too overly difficult and not fun. But the thing what separates Dark Souls is from a lot of them is production budget. Dark Souls throws probably hundreds of thousands of dollars in cutscenes, while these other indie companies throw like $5,000 into their cutscenes, and it shows. And that's what separates Dark Souls there. Boss fights, the fun level, the production, just the music alone should be game of the year every year for every Dark Souls game.
So my take on the games, or what you said about the 2D games, I feel like Dark Souls style cannot be mimicked on a 2D plane to an extent. To me, it's a lot harder to pull off a Dark Soul style game on a 2D platform. However, I feel like you need to do a lot more tweaking on a 2D plane. For example, when Metroid came out, you have a bunch of power-ups, and you were told to go. You weren't told how to get them, so you had to figure out how to get them, and it made bosses easier. So, and then we had Symphony of the Night with Castlevania, and that to me created a genre called Metroidvania, because it was a combination of Metroid and Castlevania that created Metroidvania. And you weren't told really what to do in that game as well. You just know that your end goal was to find out why Dracula's castle was resurrected. So I feel like that style of gameplay, because it was difficult, because Castlevania was like the Dark Souls at that time, but Castlevania was hard because of different reasons. And if you're gonna go 2D but Dark Souls-esque, I feel like it's better to mimic the Metroidvania style within Symphony of the Night than taking a 3D plane, 3D style game and putting it 2D. But Dismount, what's your thoughts on any of this?
I don't like, from what I've watched of Joe playing Dark Souls, like I don't feel like it would be a good 2D game. I don't feel like it would have the same. You still have the same level of difficulty, I guess, but you wouldn't have that same pop. I feel like the way of 2D gaming is kind of going to the side, except for nostalgia purposes and for games that basically are like side-scrolling, level jumpers, and at that point you're just making the game linear to like the most extreme part. Like you start at the beginning of a level and you go to the end of it, and I feel like like I said, aside from certain games that are like okay, like Contra style games. What was that one that was like free to play? Or no, it wasn't free. It was more of a satire 2D scroller. Uh, what was it? It was on PS4. My mind just went
Was
completely
it like
blank.
the angry nerd?
No,
That was like
it was like it had like
Cave Story.
Arnold
Oh,
Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone was the characters in it, like all the action heroes.
like the
I don't know.
Expendables.
Yeah, it was kind of like that,
Like
but
that, but
2D. It was a 2D scroller,
right.
and I feel like with the exception of those games, like I don't feel like you can take a game like Nioh or Dark Souls and make it a 2D game. I feel like it has to be a 3D game, and I feel like to move forward, you need to make it open world. I feel like Dark Souls did a decent job with that, like where it's open world, but you still have to do certain things to be able to get to certain levels. Kind of like the Legend of Zelda series. I mean, you have to have that somewhat of a progression. That way, you can't just go to the end boss and like get your ass kicked, and you're like, oh, I don't know what happened. Well, you didn't do any of this other stuff. That's why. So I feel like 3D gaming is ultimately the standard of gaming. If you want to have a game like that, I feel like if you want to do 2D, it has to be a what do I want to say?
You can make it like there's this one game called the Binding of Isaac, that is very difficult because it's random. That's what makes it difficult, and the bosses are actually difficult after a certain point. So you kind of are relying on certain items to get, and I feel like that's how close as you can get to an RPG-esque Dark Souls type game, because it is very difficult, for the sole purpose of your enemy. The game actually does get more difficult the more you beat it. Each game is different with different item drops.
Right.
You also will face different bosses. Like you could face, I think, depending on the room you get, you could face like one of three bosses, and each boss has a different play style you have to adjust to in order to beat that boss. You can't fight the boss number one like you did boss number two, like boss number three. Like you have to fight boss number one, and then boss number two is completely different. So you gotta have a different strategy. And then boss number three is just completely different from the previous two bosses. There's no similarities between the bosses. Right. Up to a certain extent, there is like a little bit, because some bosses are kind of copied, but they have like a different thing that makes them different.
You can only do so much. I mean, with as advanced as technology is now, there's only so much you can do with it. So, I mean, you still have to have there's going to be those similarities where it's like, okay, well, boss number 8, I fought him like this, but if you make the levels long enough in between, like you kind of forget that strategy.
Right.
And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, hey, wait, I need to do this and this and this, and that's how I can beat this guy. You need to be, and it's just like that way with actual combat. I mean, you have to know your enemy, you have to know how to beat them, you have to know the strategy to beat them. So I feel like games that do that are kind of more or less on the realistic path of being in actual combat. I think it makes it more immersive, because it makes you feel like you're actually doing something, not just as your character progressing, but as yourself progressing as a better gamer in that game.
Right. So next topic I want to bring up is, the Souls genre is getting, or Soul style is definitely getting more interesting. Do you think that Nintendo could come out with either a Dark Souls game, because they're allowing a lot more third-party developers on their Nintendo Switch platform, or do you think existing Nintendo games, such as the ones I could see most likely having a Dark Soul-esque style, is The Legend of Zelda or Metroid? So what are your thoughts on that, and how do you think what could Nintendo do to execute that and make it their own style?
I mean, I feel like Legend of Zelda is like a big one that they could do a Dark Souls esque kind of system with, because it's already kind of has that kind of character progression and that kind of open world style play, to where it would be pretty easy to just adapt Dark Souls style gameplay to what they've already built with that IP.
Nintendo should stick with what Nintendo knows how to do.
Joe, don't
And
tell
that's
Nintendo
Mario.
what to do.
Hey, you don't know me.
Right?
That's my Nintendo. I mean, they buy up IPs. They like Bayonetta 2 and stuff like that, but they really already have their sole thing they focus on and don't really branch out.
Well, see, here's the
Too
thing.
much.
You could make The Legend of Zelda more Soul-esque. I'm not asking for... I mean, I am asking if they could create their own Dark Soul-esque game, or create a game such as Legend of Zelda, which is, to me, the closest one you could do, into a more... like a Dark Soul-esque game, like just one game that's more Dark Soul-esque, because Legend of Zelda is like an RPG, essentially an action RPG, but your character just makes weird noises and can't speak proper English.
And with that too, like Nintendo, especially with the Switch, I've noticed has kind of started. They've kind of lost their exclusivity. And so they're kind of starting to branch out into third-party titles. You see more and more stuff saying, hey, yeah, we're going to port over to the Switch. It's not going to be as good as it is on the PS4 or the Xbox One, but we're going to port it over to this. And they kind of started that with the Wii U. You had Call of Duty and stuff on there, which was never really... I mean, it was on...
Wait, they had Call of Duty on Wii U? That sounds like a terrible idea.
They had Call of Duty on Wii U. They had Call of Duty on the Wii, actually, and it was terrible. Nobody bought it, and then they did it on the Wii U to where it was still controller style. And what was the one? I just saw one recently where they're putting it on the Nintendo Switch, and I feel like they're starting to kind of figure out that they can't survive on their own IPs alone. With Mario and Zelda and Mario Kart, like those are like the big three on Nintendo, and other than that, it's just like random stuff. So they're kind of starting to branch out into third-party IPs and allow those to come to the Nintendo Switch. The problem with that is that the hardware limitations, because Nintendo's always been so far behind Sony and Microsoft, that it takes a considerable amount of programming to basically downgrade the game to be able to make it playable on a Nintendo platform. So I feel like even if they did, I feel like if they made a Nintendo exclusive IP that's Dark Souls-esque, it would do well, just because it's Nintendo and you can only get it on Nintendo, and Nintendo still has a big following. But I feel like all in all, with their next console, they need to update their hardware, make it compatible with Sony and Microsoft, and start including these third-party titles in there instead of relying on their exclusive IPs to carry them. Otherwise, I don't feel like a Dark Souls game would do well on Nintendo Switch, because you'd have to downgrade it so much, because it's basically a mobile gaming platform.
Well, we'll talk about the Switch in a different podcast on what we like, what we don't like, what Nintendo is doing with.
Yeah, Nintendo's playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers. So
Joe, save your smart butt comments for the next podcast. But yeah, we'll do a dedicated podcast to Nintendo and Nintendo Switch, because I feel like that's a whole podcast episode in itself, where we could talk about for a couple hours about Nintendo Switch, what it's doing, what Nintendo's doing, and all in the games and all that stuff. But I mean, for the sake, I just wanted to be devil's advocate with, could Nintendo do a Dark Souls game with what they currently have in terms of titles?
They could.
I definitely think they could, especially with Legend of Zelda.
Yeah,
because
Zelda's the big one that they could do it with.
I mean, we don't really have any we've only had one post-apocalyptic whatever Zelda game, and that's the first Zelda technically, because that's the Zelda. Just to talk about the timeline, that is very confusing. That is the timeline. I put that in air quotes. Where the hero in Ocarina of Time apparently loses to Ganon, and Ganon took over, and then obviously you're reborn as Zelda again. I mean, Link again, because that's how.
Don't you ever get those two up again?
Right, Zelda's the one that doesn't do anything. Link just.
You're gonna get so much hate mail for that.
Link just goes, yeah. Ow.
Zelda's the girl. Link is the guy you play as. God, you're a piece of shit.
Why don't you even call it Legend of Zelda then? That's for another discussion. Why the heck did they call it Legend of Zelda?
Because the Legend of the Princess, you're playing as Link. It's the Legend of the Princess. That's a whole other topic.
Right, that's a whole other topic on naming conventions with Nintendo. But Zelda is definitely one, and Metroid I actually could see as one as well.
See, I don't see that one as much as a Dark Souls-esque IP.
It's definitely possible. You would have to change the formula, which I don't think they should do right now, actually, because they're trying to bring it back. They're trying to bring back games that succeeded before and revitalize them. And, I feel like we're definitely going to see more Metroid games. The next I would love to see is Mega Man, but we'll talk about Mega Man in a different one as well.
I feel like Metroid, if you try to do a Metroid Dark Souls-esque game, what you would come out with is Dead Space.
The good Dead Space. It's not Dead Space 3. We don't like to talk about Dead Space 3.
We're not going to talk about Dead Space 3.
No, we pretend that one doesn't exist. As far as I'm concerned, the series ended at Dead Space 2 and left you on a cliffhanger.
Oh, you like Dead Space 3?
No, Joe. No one liked Dead Space 3.
Well, I like Dead Space 3.
Joe, you're like one out of no one that likes Dead Space 3, all right? No one liked it. Everyone returned their copies at GameStop. You can get it for like $4, or you can actually, I got it for free on Origin. They just gave it to me. They're like, here, we don't want it.
Just take it.
Just take it, please. We'll pay you. Here's $10. But so overall, I feel like the future of Dark Souls, if these games don't do well, like upcoming Dark Souls games, if they don't do well, I can highly anticipate that we're going to get a remake of Demon Souls and Dark Souls, because I feel like those two games actually do deserve a remaster, because it is what really kicked off the series, especially Dark Souls 1. I mean, when Dark Souls 1 came out, everyone blew up, and it was like, oh my god, this game is so hard, but it's amazing. And so many memes and animations and parodies, and all was created because of Dark Souls. You don't see that as much with Demon Souls, but with Dark Souls, there was so much created with that. Not really in merchandising, just when you see a funny animation of it, you really pique the interest. Like, well, what the heck is this game really like? And people buy it, and it's really cheap on PC actually, and that's why I recommend actually getting it on, just because it'll be actually like an updated version. Even though it's actually not 1080p, I think you have to like hack it somehow, make it 1080p, and it's actually locked at 30 frames. But I would love to see a Dark Souls and Demon Souls remake. I never got a chance to get Demon Souls, but I would love to see a remake that completely remasters it to make it look like Dark Souls 3, creating everything from the ground up. That would take some time, but that would be very interesting. I would not want to see an HD upscale that is super lazy and just creates more bugs than you need. So
that's what HD remakes are all about.
That's what they're all about, to get that quick buck.
Hashtag episode 3 of Beyond the Pixel. No,
That's
episode 1.
episode 1. That's what we started the series off. And that,
Go back and watch it.
right, it actually has like 40 something views on it. It's actually pretty nice. But yeah, I would love to see that. So final thoughts. Now that Dark Souls is over and we're seeing all these different genres, what type of Dark Souls game would you like to see? I'm gonna start with you, Joe. All right, Dismount, I'm gonna start with you.
Joe's not here. Please leave a message at the tone.
Right.
Your audio went out, man. I didn't even hear you.
What? My audio went out. If Dismount heard me, then that's your problem.
I didn't even.
That's like it's on your end. Joe, how do you? What would you like to see as the future of Dark Souls?
Yeah, what like genre games would you like to see? Where would you like to see
what genre
Dark Souls
go? Man, if they release a Dark Souls every year and a half, I'd be happy.
That doesn't answer my question.
They don't pay me to think. They don't even pay me to play. They just take my money. There's people who get paid to think.
All right, Dismount, I pay you to think with fake money.
with fake money. I'm still money. The check is in the mail.
The check is in the mail. If you don't get it, then it got lost in the mail. But
right, exactly.
What okay, I guess I will rephrase my question. There's a lot of mythologies out there. You have Chinese mythology, Indian mythology, Japanese mythology, Roman mythology, Greek mythology, South America, Amazon mythology, all these different types of African mythologies that have 100,000 different other African mythologies. What mythology would you like to see next in a Dark Souls game, or would you like to see a more futuristic Dark Souls game?
Well, I'm a big fan and a big buff for history. I love history. I love fantasy history. I love the medieval times. Like that's my favorite era of human history is like the castles and the kings and the peasants and all that stuff. I would like to see a game like For Honor, but in a Dark Souls format. I would like to see where
Dark Souls 1 through 3.
You shut your mouth.
It really is.
No, I want to see like a medieval, more realistic, not so much fantasy.
So more Game of Thrones like.
Yeah, well, that's still kind of a fantasy thing because you got dragons.
Okay, if we excluded that the dragons didn't exist and there's no White Walkers in the North crashing down. Spoilers alert: there's dragons and there's White Walkers. Deal with
hashtag spoilers. Don't listen.
Spoilers. But
yeah, I would like to see like a game of. I would like to see like a Robin Hood type Dark Souls game where you're that outcast that has been banned from nations. You have no home. You have no home, no world, no family to call your own, and you kind of fight to become like the king of the kingdom, and bring peace to everything because there's a big giant war going on, and I'd like to see like that type of game, like
a game where you actually become king.
Right? Yeah, where you go from
made it seem like
Fable 3.
Where you go from like half naked peasant walking down a dirt road with nothing but 2 pence to your name and a dagger, and you go from that to ruling the nation, ruling the kingdom. I would like to see that type of game come to fruition.
So you want a game that you want a game that actually like you're literally nobody like in all the Dark Souls game, but you actually become like a king or a god that rules the land and
like the end of Dark Souls.
No, Joe, not like the end of Dark Souls, because in the end of Dark Souls there's like 4 endings. They're all confusing. Spoiler alert, none of them matter because there's no Dark Souls 4. So
yeah, that's what I would like to see. I would like to see something where you come up from nobody. I mean, it's the American dream, so to speak. Coming from nothing to having everything.
Now we're here.
Yeah, started from the bottom. Now we're here, and maybe you have your whole crew there. I mean, who knows? Maybe it's like what was that game where you? Oh, there was a game where you would like fight and you could like recruit people and Assassin's Creed.
Yeah.
You could recruit people and you had people and start from the bottom and my whole crew's effing here. You know what I'm saying?
I know what you mean. So it's kind of like an MMO type esque, but actually have a good story. That
right.
Actually, you end up.
I want an MMO that actually has a good story. That's what I want.
All right, so Joe doesn't care as long as we get a Dark Souls-esque game. For me, I would love to see different mythologies, such as Norse mythology, Greek mythology. That's not God of War. Jesus Christ, we had enough of God of War. But I want something that actually, you actually become something. In Dark Souls, you don't really become something. You just become fodder to the fire, or you are essentially just forget the fire and become a Dark Soul, kind of. It's not really clear on the Dark Soul endings, but I would love to see a fruit of your labor that is Dark Soul-esque. I become the king or the god of these people. Maybe not the god, but maybe the king of these people. They're my subjects. I could kill one and not give a crap. I have 500 million more.
King.
I would be.
You gotta be a just king.
I wouldn't be a just king. I would be a tyrant.
You'd be that asshole that's like, you serve me, peasant.
I would be Joffrey. I would be. I would be him, and like, you know what? You betrayed me. Off with your head. You looked at me weird. Off with your head. No, I wouldn't be like. I would be like. I actually would be like Daenerys. I would have dragons. And it's like, you either serve me or get burned to a crisp. Spoiler alert: people die from dragon fire. If you didn't know that, it's a spoiler.
That was in season 2.
That was in season 2. So if you didn't watch season 2, then go back, rewatch it, and then skip to season 7 that we're on, and rewatch it again. More people get.
I just watched the season finale of season 2, so
I'm not gonna spoil any more. But that's what I want to see. I want to see a game with Chinese mythology. I want to see a game with Indian mythology. I want to see a game with African mythology, Egyptian mythology.
Japanese mythology.
That's what we have Nioh for, but I want to actually see one better than
Nioh. Like you watched like the movie what was that The Last Samurai with Tom Cruise, like that kind of like that. Why did you play fucking Nioh? Why am I not playing this game?
Don't play Nioh.
Don't play Nioh.
Hey, no, I love that movie. I want to play this fucking game.
I mean, it's
sorry,
but it's not the same. You want to.
Another thing I kind of want to see is like a kung fu fighting Dark Souls, where
Absolver
is what? What did you say, Joe? Absolver? No, not Absolver. Forget Absolver. That doesn't count. I want to see an actual fighting game with different fighting styles that are actually good. It kind of like
So Dragon Ball Z,
Xenoverse,
and this is why they get paid. People paid to think.
I could go where you can go Super Saiyan. You can fly everywhere. No, it would be very realistic. Like when you get punched, if you get punched in real life, you're going down. Like by an actual kung fu master.
It depends.
Like if you get hit by a kung fu master, if you get punched, all right. Or if you get punched by a boxer, whatever. I want there to be some type of actually you fight, you can block, you have a counter system, something kind of like For Honor, but actually good and not made by Ubisoft. That's what I want to see. Is that too much to ask?
I want to. You know what I want to see is For Honor, not made by Ubisoft.
They just take the Peacekeeper out of For Honor.
Fantastic. The Peacekeeper is my favorite character, and you can shut your mouth.
Probably because it's the most broken character.
It's everyone's favorite character.
No, it wasn't because she was the most broken character, because I couldn't play her for crap. But I just liked, that was my style of fighting, was the quick in and out and darting. Just because she had that stupid broken 3-stab bleeding thing that took like 3/4 of your health every time you did it, doesn't mean she was broken, okay? It's a legit thing. If you get stabbed in the ribs 3 times. That was what we were taught as tankers in the army. Okay, stab, twist, pull, repeat.
That sounds very painful and very monotonous.
It is. That was our creed, though. That was in our creed. Stab between the second and third rib, twist, pull, repeat. That was in our motto.
All right.
I don't know why, because we were tankers and we never left the tank.
All right. Based off of that, I actually want to see like execution crap. Not that's making a hack and slash. I was gonna say I want some type of execution kill, but that's making it like a hack and slash, and I don't want a hack and slash.
Play the Surge.
I don't want the Surge, Joe. The Surge is crap. We all know it.
No, the Surge has been made easy for everyone now.
No, I hate that. Don't make the game easy. You should make it hard, but you shouldn't make it unbeatable, and you shouldn't make it cheap.
No, I think you should make... I like Call of Duty's stance on this, where they have different difficulty levels, because when I play Call of Duty campaigns for the first time, what I want to do is play on the easiest difficulty level so I can get the story. And then after that, I'll go back and through and play it on the hard level so I can die 1,900 times. No, I don't even care about the trophies, but I just want to know that I can beat it on the hard level and die 19 times to the same minion that's not even the boss yet. And
get one shot from a distance. Like, who just shot me?
I'm like, hey, I'm coming over this hill. Bam, dead. You died. Respawn. Hey, I'm going over this hill. Bam, you died. Like, that's fine later on, but at the beginning, I want to be able to... I'm not good at video games, so what I want to do is I want to go through, play, get the story, and enjoy it, and then I'll go back through and play it at a harder difficulty level.
That's how all shooters play. Even though I don't think shooters really need a story. I don't think
shooters
it's a necessity.
I play Call of Duty for the campaign. I don't play them for the multiplayer because I suck at multiplayer.
I only play it for the multiplayer. I don't care about the story.
That's because you're good and I'm not.
I wouldn't call me good.
That's because you're better than me and I'm not.
I mean, no one was good on Infinite Warfare, so.
On Infinite, bro, you can't even say that you're good at Call of Duty if you're good at Infinite Warfare.
No, Infinite Warfare. No one's good, but that's for another topic, gentlemen. So October is coming up, so definitely. The last Wednesday, which unfortunately the 31st is not on a Wednesday, but the last Wednesday we'll be having a horror game discussion. So that'll be the 25th of October. I do plan on having some bloggers on here. I don't know when. I know I have 3 lined up. I have another YouTuber lined up, but that's going to be a recorded podcast, and I'll let you guys know when I'm going to do that. And that will be uploaded when I usually go live. And also, probably going to have recorded podcasts for 2 weeks, maybe. But the 18th, I'll definitely plan on doing a live stream. But upcoming topics are going to be the Nintendo Switch, the state of the Nintendo Switch, old school versus new school. I do have a blogger who has a really nice following on the old school gaming blog, and I'm going to have him on here. We're going to discuss old school versus new school and have questions about that. On the 25th, expect a horror live stream, and then on Tuesday, I'm going to have a different stream. I'm not going to stream on Wednesday, except I'm going to stream on Tuesday the 31st, and we will be doing something special. So, follow me on Twitter and make sure you pay attention to your subscription feeds on when I post an update video on that. So, to everyone out there in YouTube, thanks for watching. I want to thank my beautiful co-hosts here, Dismount and Joe Joseph New York.
What's up? Peace.
So, we will see you guys in the next episode of Beyond the Pixel. Peace.
Later.
Bye.